Thank you for introducing me, Paul, and thank you for all of your many emails guiding me, telling me what I needed to do to get here. And thank you to NARSOL for letting me do this presentation. Like he said, it's something that's very close to me, and so I've been working on doing advocacy work for a couple of years now. And one of the things that I want to do is to educate people about civil commitment in our state. Earlier today, my friend and fellow advocate Lonell spoke about Minnesota. I'm going to focus on just Texas. So before we get started, I just wanted to thank my daughter, Sydney, who helps me with everything. And I can't do all this stuff without her. So have you ever heard anybody ever say, lock them up and throw away the key? That's exactly what civil commitment is. If you guys want to comment at any time or ask me any questions, since we're a really small group, go ahead. If there's a question that I don't know the answer to, Lonell probably does. So, an introduction to civil commitment. Texas is one of 20 states in the United States that has civil commitment. Civil commitment is a post-sentence institutional detention of an offender with the purpose of preventing further offenses. This is very far from reality. What they are saying is, we're going to lock you up so you don't do anything else. We don't know if you're going to do anything, but you might. You just might do something. And you see, of course, down at the bottom in blue, Texas is very active in civil commitment. Earlier in the Minnesota presentation, they were talking about the numbers and the amount of people in each state. Texas probably has approximately 450, and probably maybe at the end of the year they may reach 500. That is their goal, to fill that place up. It's already overcrowded. So the laws that govern civil commitment are found within 20 states, including the U.S., including Texas. After 2 or more offenses and a quoted behavior abnormality, a board reviews if an individual meets the criteria to be placed in civil commitment. Each state has different criteria. Texas has its specific rules and its specific guidelines. Each other state has different guidelines. But in Texas, you have to have a minimum of 2 offenses, and then you also have to have that behavior abnormality. That is not a medical term. That's a legal term. And it can range anywhere from ADHD, antisocial personality disorder, some men who have like schizophrenia, any kind of weird thing that they want to label you with, they're going to label you, and that becomes your behavior abnormality, which makes you eligible for civil commitment. Currently in Texas, there is not a release date. Civil commitment is a life sentence. They can keep you there until the day you die. For many men, it does become a death sentence. Many of them die in the facility and are not released. So everybody likes a good, juicy story, right? Everybody likes a little bit of intrigue, a little bit of mystery, maybe some romance, maybe murder. This story I'm going to tell you has a little bit of all of it combined. So this is going to show you where there's one facility in the state of Texas. It's located in Littlefield, Texas. If you're not familiar with Littlefield, where it's at, or anything about it, you can look in the Panhandle, Amarillo, Lubbock. Littlefield is about 35, 45 minutes from Lubbock. There's not much to look at. It's very dry. It's very desolate. A lot of tumbleweeds, a lot of dirt. There's not much there. This is a 30-minute drive from Lubbock. It's home of the country singer Waylon Jennings. That's like their main thing that they go to whenever you talk about Littlefield. The main sources of income are related to cotton farming, oil drilling. Its current population is about 5,757, and that's based off of the current census that was just done recently. Okay, this is a very small town. It has very little businesses to serve its population or to provide any kind of job opportunities. There's a lot of abandoned buildings on the square. It's very run down looking. So ideally, when this place was built, it was built as a prison. So they were trying to generate revenue, jobs into that town. And so they jumped on board real fast with the idea of building a prison. It was not turned into the Civil Commitment Center until 2015. So the facility's beginning, this is the outside of the building as you pull up. It was the Bill Clayton Detention Center, previously used to house juveniles grades 5 to 10. Then it was converted into a medium security correctional facility. Beginning in 2015, the Texas Civil Commitment Office was renamed the building to the Texas Civil Commitment Center. You may hear me refer to it as the facility. It now houses about 450 grown men that have already completed their prison sentences. So all of the guys that are currently at Civil Commitment Center have done their time day for day. There are a few that have been paroled and sent there, but most of the men completed their full sentences. Some are 30 years, 20 years, 15 years. It varies. So my very first thoughts of the Civil Commitment Center, I lived in the town over, which is Levelland, and not a very big town either. I'm a single mother for practically my whole entire adult life. I needed a job. This place was hiring. So my experience with TCCC started in December of 2018. At that time, the center was under, their vendor was called Correct Care. Correct Care is a healthcare company for prisoners, and my job title was a Therapeutic Security Technician, TST. My initial thoughts when I went was that I'm going to be working in a prison as a security officer, and I had never, ever heard of civil commitment. Most people that we talk to don't know what civil commitment is either. Okay, this is my pictures, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. The very first picture is me on my first day of work. I'm gonna go, I'm gonna do good, this is gonna be great, all smiles, okay? I had no idea what my life was gonna turn into at that point. The second picture is my uniform with Correct Care. We were dressed in green. We had to wear, hair up, hair back, out of our faces. We had to look the part. Looking back at all these pictures, like I said, I had no idea what a mess that place was inside the walls. And then the third picture is my actual badge whenever MTC took over Texas Civil Commitment Center. And they come around and they pass out these pins and they want to tell you, you're doing such a great job, MTC, bionic. And it says, believe it or not, everyone cares, or I care. That's very far from the truth. But that's what MTC's motto is, bionic. So it's, if you work there, it's kind of a little, it's a slap in the face. They don't care. So a little bit about the layout of the building and a description of it. The facility, like I said, the Texas Civil Commitment Center, it's set up in different pods or dorms. A lot of times I call it a pod. So you'll start with the main building from the outside, which houses all of the administration, the infirmary, the kitchen, all of your classrooms, offices for the caseworkers, things like that, and the administration is all housed in the Alpha building, okay? The other buildings are going to be Bravo, which is the largest one, and then Charlie, Delta, Echo, and the newest addition that happened when I was employed there was Foxtrot, which is actually trailer houses that they had moved in there, and is housing that's supposed to get the men that are about to leave the Tier 4s adjusted to living like back in the real world. But you still share a room with another guy. You have like a central kitchen area, a central like couch living area. But basically it's trailer houses that they moved in. So you'll have the Alpha building, and then this picture right here is actually the breezeway is what we call it. It's fenced in on all sides. It's covered on the top with tin. You'll see there's razor wire also. The men have to walk through the breezeways to get to each place they want to go to. So this is leaving the Alpha pod going to the additional pods. That looks like they're headed to the gym. I actually got this picture off of an article that the story, the TICO was featured in. The fences are lined with razor wire, and there's multiple security checkpoints when entering or exiting each section of the premises. So in order to get into the facility, you have to first go through a gate. Right here's the outside of the facility, more razor wire, more fences. There's the first checkpoint where you hit the buzzer and you have to be buzzed in from central control. Your next checkpoint is going to be at the front door, metal detector, and an officer at the front gate. Then there's another checkpoint, which is called the crash gates, located by central control. Everything is controlled by an officer. Every movement we make or anyone else makes, the residents, and that's what they're called, residents or clients. They are not supposed to be called inmates because it's not a prison, they say. It's everything. It's a prison. So this is just a picture of it. Of course, you can see the tumbleweeds, you can see the dry, you can see the dirt. Nobody wants to go there. It's very desolate. A lot of the families that have to go visit their loved ones are driving 6, 7, 8 hours just to get there. It's very closed off from all the rest of us. It's very, very rare that someone's family lives close by to this facility in this town. So a constant state of disrepair. Those of us that are familiar with the TICO office, the TICO building, know something's always broken. Nicole, her son, is housed at the facility. He lives in Bravo. There's no AC in Bravo right now. The AC's out. So a constant state of disrepair. The men who first arrived at the TICO, the Civil Commitment Center, had to be put to work to get the facility in livable conditions. It had been closed and vacant for couple of years, so they had to literally sweep, clean, paint, get the place up and running. And this is what the original ones, we call them outpatient, this is what they had to do to get the place ready. They had to have livable conditions, and these are not limited to the cleaning, the painting, and the maintenance. This so-called rehabilitation is nothing more than an old rundown prison, and it's simply not up to code for the number of men that are currently housed there, which I said nearing 500 men. Okay, right now it's overcrowded. Here's a look inside one of the facility rooms, which will hold up to 2 individuals. It very much resembles a prison cell. There's cramped living conditions, bunk beds, and the toilet sink combination inside. Room searches can be conducted at random with little or no notice to the clients. Due to the overcrowding, a big room is used to hold anywhere from 12 to 14 men. These big rooms are on each pod. Each dorm has a big room. They were originally used back in the day for like TV recreation areas. So it's just a large room. It has 2 toilets. What they did is they went in and filled it with bunk beds. So as many bunk beds as you can get in there. And like I said, anywhere from 12 to 14 men stacked like sardines in that big room. Not counting when you walk around that pod, you're going to have the individual cells. The cells look exactly like this. This is an actual picture of an actual room. Since this one has the shower in the room, this looks like Alpha. So Alpha is the main building. This man in the picture is since been released. His name is Ronald Mitchell. I worked with him a lot. I'm very familiar with him. He is currently a Tier 5. Tier 5 means you live in the community. The program at TCCC is a tiered program. You arrive, most of the time you start at a Tier 1. You'll be evaluated either on what you did in prison as far as treatment or what level they put you in, but most people arrive starting at a 1. Then you have 2, 3, 4, and then 4, you get ready to get out. They call that AGE. And AGE are always the next ones getting ready to go. And then Tier 5, they release you into the community. Okay, if you can see on Mr. Mitchell's ankle, you might be able to see his ankle monitor. He is lifetime parole due to his offenses. He will always wear an ankle monitor. But the men at the facility, Tier 1s and 2, and then sometimes 3s, have to wear an ankle monitor. You are inside that facility with the razor wire, with all the checkpoints I told you about, and then you have to have an officer's permission to move, and now you still have to have an ankle monitor. These GPS devices let your case manager and let TICO know where you are. Why do they have any question as to where you are? You're locked in the facility. Why do they need an ankle monitor? This is just an added expense that taxpayers, families have to pay to keep these men imprisoned. So currently, the day rooms. The day room is where they go to eat dinner, lunch, where they watch TV, where they do their homework. There's day rooms in every one. So if you walk around in a circle, you have the cells on the outside, you have a big room located to the side. Your day room is everything in the middle, like how we're sitting. The day rooms are now having cubicles placed in them due to overcrowding. So they're literally putting beds in the day rooms. So someone's watching TV next to your bed. Someone's eating dinner next to your bed. This is how crowded they are, right? Whenever I was there, I left in 21. When I was there, there was a pantry closet. So across from the kitchen, you go and get your dry goods. That's now living quarters. There's no shower in there. It's a pantry. There's no toilet in there. It's a pantry. They turned it into living quarters because they don't have enough space. So going back to little space, what you see right here is Mr. Ronald Mitchell again and Senator Whitmire. Those of us familiar with civil commitment are not fond of Senator Whitmire. Pictured is a client who is currently a Tier 5 in one of the day rooms speaking to Senator Whitmire. This photo was taken back in 2015 amid the opening of the center. This room is now most likely filled with bunk beds and all of the men's belongings. There's also lockers in the rooms, in the day rooms. You're assigned one locker, and it's just like back when we were in school. Your locker you had at school, it's a metal locker. You have to squish all your belongings in a locker, and you're allowed 2 totes, 2 Rubbermaid totes to keep your stuff in. Okay, just a little, oh, I broke it. Just a little tidbit of information about Senator Whitmire. He's currently running for mayor of Houston, and he is projected front runner. So Senator Whitmire, civil commitment was strongly pushed and publicized by Senator Whitmire. The men who are currently in TCCC were previously held in halfway houses, which were scattered throughout the state. So they would finish their sentence, they would be evaluated, they were told they had to go to civil commitment. Back then, you went to a halfway house, and they had them in Houston, El Paso, they had them in different areas of the state. So when the statutes and the laws were changed in 2015, it's the Health and Safety Code 841. It sent every one of these men to a single location, which is in Littlefield, Texas. They were loaded onto buses. Some of them were taken away from their families, and some of them were even in the community with their own houses. They lived with their family members, or they had bought houses, or they were succeeding. They were all picked up and taken to Littlefield. Some of the men were promised that this would be a 6-month program. Some people were told a year. Many of these same men are still held there, and there's no telling when they'll get out. So a lot of us that are really focused on the advocacy, our guys are what's considered outpatient. Outpatient means you came from the halfway house, you've been there since the beginning. So Whitmire's plans, him and his supporters are touring the facility. He expressed all of his hopes for TCCC, which were used in several of his articles that he was featured in to try to gain support. The aspirations that he expresses to the reporters is laughable. The state of the facility is completely contradicting what Senator Whitmire first set out to achieve with Texas Civil Commitment Center. Now on to the fun stuff. This is your introduction to Marsha McLean. This failed program is run by Marsha McLean. She is the executive director. McLean has a BA in criminal justice and corrections from Kent State University from 74 to 77, and an MA in special education and corrections from University of North Texas from 83 to 84. Corrections and special education, but not treatment or rehabilitation or therapy, but she's the executive director. As of 2023, Ms. Marsha McLean makes an estimated $240,000 annually. So Marsha McLean oversees the Littlefield facility, even though she's based out of Austin. Her office is in Austin. That's 7-8 hours away, along with her employer, the Texas Civil Commitment Office. She makes all the decisions in every aspect of the residents' lives, right down to who they are allowed to speak to. McLean has expressed more than once that she is the final decision maker to a man's release from civil commitment, stating that her signature is on the form that grants the man their freedom. So if she says you can't go, you can't go. This woman went to the Texas lawmakers that we all elected. She asked them for $49 million to fund her failing program. This is why we went and spoke at the Senate and at the House. It's because she's asking for money to run something that does not work. So much like Minnesota, this program has to have a PPG. I'll try to say it, penile plethysmograph. I'm not good at it. You also have to do a polygraph. It's called a maintenance polygraph. Your polygraph can determine if you move up in tier. You also have a biennial review every 2 years. There's such things as compliance if you don't go to group. These men are required to go to about 6 hours a
Saturday
group a week.
has some alarming allegations against
Technical difficulties. These men are also placed on restrictions. Like Lonell had stated earlier, if they don't feel good and don't want to go to group, you're going to get sanctioned by it. You're going to get called in, talked to by your therapist, by your case manager. They want to know why you didn't go. You can't simply say, I'm sick, I don't feel good. You have to have permission to not show up. If you're non-compliant and don't go to group and don't do your assignments, you can't have commissary. You can't have packages. You can't go to rec. You can't do anything. They will lock you down on the unit and you will stay there. About the only thing that you're allowed to do if you're non-compliant is go to law library. And even that is determined by how much staff they have. If MTC doesn't have enough people to run it, they're not running it that day. When I worked there, we suffered from so much short-staffed, so much people calling in, quitting, everything. I can't even remember how many times we were fully staffed. And if we were, we had a bunch of new boots coming in. They got trained. They saw what it was. They left. So talk about training for a little bit. My first day, I was waiting to get my uniform. I was in plain clothes. They said, let's show you around the facility. Let's show you what you're going to be working with. Let's talk to you about it. Make a decision if this is what you want to do. So at that time, the lady that was the trainer had just been a captain, and she changed positions to the trainer. So we went all around the facility. She was very much respected and very much liked by the men. You could tell they greeted her, Captain Cruz, she was very respected. They liked her. When I was walking around the facility, I was like, well, how come they're dressed like that? Because you can wear your own clothes there. You don't have to wear, all whites or orange or stripes or anything like that. They're allowed to wear their own clothes. There's one man that was so friendly and engaging and kind. I thought he worked there. He was a resident. I will always remember him, and I was like, who's that guy? And they're like, oh, that's Mr. So-and-so. He lives here. So they took us around and they showed us, and of course everybody looks at you and everybody wants to know who you are because they're trying to figure out how long you're going to last. I had one guy, I was there almost 3 years, and he goes, the first time I saw you, I never thought you would last more than a week. I'm like, well, thanks, appreciate that, So it's very interesting now to look back on it and to see the things that we saw. When I started working there, I was a high achiever. I wanted to just make it to the top. I'm like, this is good. This is what I want to do. I had previously gone to college for criminal justice. I had attended the police academy. My father was law enforcement. I'm like, this is right up my alley. When I had worked there and I started watching and I started looking, why is this one in trouble for this? Why is this one? Well, don't question. You're not supposed to question. You're not supposed to ask why. But then the more the men feel comfortable with you, the more they're going to tell you, well, we don't ever leave. No, so-and-so doesn't leave. We can't talk to our family. We can't do this. This. So after I had been there about a year, I was like, this place is weird. Honestly, it's weird. I had never heard of it. I had never experienced anything like that. During training, my very first day, I was given an assignment. Remember, I told you there's a little bit of murder involved here? So what they told us is, we want you to Google this man. We want you to look up this man. He lives here. So they gave us the name of the man, went home. This was our homework, was to watch the story on him. And the next day I went back looking for him. Where's this guy? I want to see this guy. He's not any taller than me. He always had a smile. He always had a nice thing to say. He always was the model prisoner, the model inmate. He's still there. He won't leave. So that first day, they told us, you're going to be dealing with men who are here because they're sex offenders. These men have committed some of the worst crimes you've ever thought of. These men are, and I'm repeating what was told to me, pieces of shit. These men are master manipulators. Don't trust them. Don't be alone with them. Don't have conversations with them. You know, if you're a woman, they're going to try to manipulate you. They would tell us, don't wear too much makeup, don't wear too much perfume, don't do this, don't do that. So already that first day, they're trying to tell us all these things. But I was like, I got a job to do. I'm a single mom. I need a paycheck. This place paid good. That would be my downfall later on, is that I was still there making that paycheck for something that I knew was ethically wrong. Okay, so now I want to get into talking about COVID. All of us know how devastating COVID was. At the time of COVID hit the facility, the first real problem we had was about October of 2020. I was still on night shift. I started on night shift. That's what I wanted. That's what worked with my family. At that time, MTC had already taken over and bought out the company, so we were now being run by MTC, which is Management and Training Corporation. So one day we went to work, and we had been on days off, and somebody told me that, somebody was sick, they were going to take him to the hospital, whatever. We had heard, a little bit about COVID, but it wasn't anything that we were, nobody expected COVID to do what it did. So this man went to the hospital. He never came back. He died. He was our first death, and I believe that was in October of 20. So there was no precautions. There was no protocol. There was no plan of action set up to do. Nobody knew how to do anything. They started bringing in gowns, more gloves, those flimsy fabric masks. Started telling us, well, if you go around this area, you have to suit up, but you don't have to suit up in this area. But here you do, and here you don't. And then they would tell us, well, wear this, wear that one gown. You get one gown. Wear it everywhere. If you have contaminated men in Bravo, but you're supposed to go count in Charlie, and you're wearing that same gown, are you not contaminating the whole facility as you walk down there to do it? But in order to save money, we were told, make that one last. That's the one you get. Okay. So that man never came back. They brought in these big blowers, and we had to pour this pink chemical into these blowers. So my captain that night told me I needed to come down and get the machine. I'm okay, whatever. I got the machine. He says, we need you to go in there and spray so-and-so's room. Why? Because he died. He died of COVID across the street at the hospital. I had never sprayed any room. I had never dealt with any kind of decontamination, anything like that. So at that point, we were on lockdown, or that pod was on lockdown because it had a case of COVID. So it looks like one of the Ghostbuster machines. So I'm suited up in a gown, and I have a mask, and then they had brought in those plastic shields. And I have this little, Ghostbuster pack. So I go to Bravo. The minute that door opens, every man's face is at his glass window looking out because they're locked down. The doors are shut. They watch me from coming in the door carrying that pack to that residence room, which was the very last one. Every eyeball watched me. I had to cut the tape that said do not enter, and I had to go in there, and I knew nothing about nothing. And I'm spraying a fully contaminated room. And all his belongings were in there. All of his stuff was in there. I sprayed it from top to bottom. It was dripping with this weird chemical. I went out, I shut the door, and I walked. And I felt all the eyes watching me again. That pod had at least 60 men in it. Bravo's one of the biggest pods. And I went out, and I'm like, I'm not doing that again. Y'all don't ask me to do that again. There were many times during COVID I would say, don't ask me to do that again. So COVID steadily got worse. The next couple of months were very intense, were very insane. This is a treatment facility. There are licensed therapists that work there. We were never offered any kind of therapy, treatment, mental help whatsoever. In fact, anybody who worked for TICO was told stay home and work from home. How do you provide treatment for somebody who's there and you're at home? So what we were asked to do as officers, remember, I'm just an officer. All I do is watch you and tell you where to go and what to do. We were asked to pass out packets, big envelopes with the residents' names written on them, manila envelopes, slide them under their door crack, open their door, hand them to them. That was their assignment. That was their homework. They collect money off of this. The amount of treatment that they offer, they get money for this. There was no treatment going on. The 6 hours of treatment that they're required to get was not happening. No therapists or TICO employees went to that facility during COVID. COVID was its worst from October 20 to all the way to February 21. During that amount of time, the men at the facility, which back then the population was in the 300s, not 450 like it is now, during that span, 12 residents died of COVID. I was present and watched at least 10 of them. So you're assigned hospital duty when someone has COVID. Most of them were taken to the nearby town of Lubbock. There's 2 hospitals. There's UMC and there's Covenant. So I would either get a text or a phone call from my captain. You have hospital duty tonight. Okay. So one officer has to go get the van, and then one could go meet, whatever. We would make arrangements. We'll go over to the hospital, and when they're diagnosed with COVID, you're not allowed in the room. That's protocol. Unless TICO calls or MTC calls and tells you, go fix their monitor. Anytime you leave the facility, you get a monitor. If you're a 3 or a 4, they will put a monitor on you before they put you on the ambulance. The EMS will wait until that monitor is put on you. Even if you're in a life and death situation, MTC will fumble around and put a monitor on you before you get medical help. So if you got a phone call from your superiors, your rank, whoever was running central control, something's wrong with somebody's monitor, I now have to suit up completely and enter a contaminated room with someone sick to check their monitor. Okay, because they can't pick up signal. A lot of times in the hospital room, you're not going to pick up signal, but they don't want to hear that. Another thing with the monitors, a lot of the men became intubated. At the point that they would be intubated, we pretty much knew they only had a certain amount of time left that they were going to pass away. Once you call and tell them that that resident has passed away, okay, cut that monitor off and bring it back. What? Go in that room, suit up, touch that dead man's leg, cut that monitor off, and bring it back to the facility. And then I go back, and then what? I hand it to them, and they're like, how was it? What did it look like? How did it feel? What? This is what I was met with. How did it feel to cut a monitor off a dead man's leg? How did it feel to watch someone suffer with COVID and die? How do you think it felt? No mental health was offered at a rehabilitation treatment center. About this time, I was going through a lot of issues mentally, questioning whether I wanted to work there or not, questioning was going for a paycheck enough. I was questioning the ethics. I was doing research at home. I was reading things that I could find online. Articles were coming out. And then there was this group of advocates. Some of them were people that used to work there. Some of them were, family members. And I reached out to them as an anonymous informant. And so I started telling them things that were going on. Through that group, I met most of the people that I know now, who are friends, who are family, we all support each other. So that's how I became an advocate. But I still worked there. I couldn't get caught. I had to sneak around. Well, I did a little bit more sneaking around too. So I was an officer, and I had been there almost 3 years. And one of the residents, he was, a nice-looking guy. He was not very friendly. And during COVID, I guess he started to see that I had a lot of issues dealing with things, couldn't really handle the stresses of the sickness, the illness. He had reached out to me on Facebook, but I didn't know it was him. I thought it was somebody else. He pretended to be a family member of this guy. Well, I started talking to this guy, and I found out later on that it was one of my residents. That's very much taboo. That's very much a rule violation. I knew it was a rule violation. He knew it was a rule violation. Many times we discussed what would happen if we got caught. At this time, he was using a cell phone that was issued by TICO because he was a Tier 3, so he was allowed that. He also had a contraband cell phone that was brought into him by another officer. That's how he was contacting me. At that point that I said I was questioning the ethical things that were going on there and the way that facility was run, I no longer cared about that job. I no longer cared if I got in trouble. That's how bad this place is, that you see through everything that they're doing, and it was merely a paycheck. Well, as it went on, it was, I'm getting paid, and I might get to see him today. I might get to see his face. That's the level that it got to. Okay, so I had moved to day shift. I was working days. I had gotten away from my captain, who was extremely hard. I worked for the hardest captain that they had there for 2 years. And to that point, when I was under that captain, I was a perfect officer. No disciplinaries, no write-ups. I was never late. I was always in proper uniform. I loved my job. Every time I tried to move up and advance, I was shot down. I made it a point to learn every position because I'm like, I'm going to move up. I want to be a sergeant. I want to be a captain. They passed me over every time. That's another reason to not care about your job anymore. I'm doing the work, I'm putting in the effort, and I'm getting passed over, and these other ones that they're moving up are useless, absolutely useless. So I didn't care about my job. I was an informant. I was speaking to a resident. So at this time, I'm not, looking very good, and I'm probably not performing the way I wanted to be, and I decided I didn't want to be an officer anymore. So there was an opening in the medical department, so I obtained my medical assistant certificate, and I moved over to the medical department. I was in charge of medication, ordering, refilling, passing out. I worked 7 days a week because we were shorthanded. I would work 2 to 10, and then on the weekends, I would work what I wanted to as long as they got their medication. I was working 7 days a week. I was paying my bills. I was getting things caught up. I was getting things done. My daughter even told me one time I was making too much money because she was filling out her college paperwork and my income had changed. She's like, "You make too much money. I'm not going to get this grant. I'm not going to get approved for this. You make too much money." So things were going okay, but at that same time, it's eating away at me what we're doing. I had a resident come to me when we were on complete lockdown and tell me, "Hey, I got to talk to my lawyer." Okay, but the phones are shut down, literally shut down. They will turn them off. Okay, well, let me call your case manager. So I reached out and I called his case manager, and he says, "Yeah, he's got this scheduled appointment with his lawyer." I said, "So it's okay that he talks to him?" He goes, "Yeah, I approve it." I let that resident out of his cell on lockdown to use the phones, the pay phones on the wall, and I was threatened with disciplinary. I said, "It's his lawyer. We don't care. Don't let him out. You're on lockdown." It was approved by TICO. MTC, my superior staff, told me, "You don't work for TICO." I said, "Don't we all work for TICO? We're the vendor. We're hired by TICO. Don't we have to listen to TICO?" I was threatened with a write-up. I walked out, and I questioned whether or not to go back. I didn't get written up, and I went back the next day, but that guy and me have never gotten along since, and he's made it a point to not like me now that I'm on the other side. So that kind of brings us to April of 2021. I was working in medical. We were back to somewhat normal. The lockdown had been released. There was more movement. TICO had come back to work. People were starting to be evaluated. People were starting to move up in tiers, up and down. Well, somebody had turned in a communication form to administration that my husband had a cell phone. And he was searched continuously for about a month. And and then eventually they found it. So the last time I saw him at the facility, he passed me by. They had put an ankle monitor back on him. They were fixing to lock him down in SMU, which I'll explain what SMU is. And I was doing my job, passing out meds. And we passed each other, and we looked at each other, and we knew that that was it. Like, we were busted. That was it. Okay, so SMU. Let me get back to the pods. You have Alpha, which is the main building. Bravo's the biggest. Charlie and Delta are identical, except they are across each other. You have Echo. Echo is Echo 1, 2, and 3. Echo 1 is called SMU, which is Special Management Unit. That's just another word for solitary confinement. This is a rehabilitation center, though, right? But why do you have solitary? And what do you use solitary for? For anything they want. They will put you in solitary if you disobey a direct order, if you say the wrong thing to an officer, if you say the wrong thing to your case manager, if you are non-compliant, if you get caught with something you're not supposed to have. They'll put you in SMU for anything. They'll even use SMU as suicide watch. And a lot of times I was placed on suicide watch because I'm a talker. So they figured if I'm busy talking to this resident, he's not going to do anything. So I don't know how many times in briefing my captain would tell me, Harner, you're on suicide. You're on CDO, constant observation. I'm like, why do I have to be on it? Because we know that if you're watching, they're not going to do anything. Yeah, okay. So I would get stuck sitting there staring at somebody for a 12-hour shift. When you're on suicide watch, they take absolutely everything away from you. They take everything. You get a turtle suit. That's it. You sleep on the floor. Concrete floor. Cinder block walls. One turtle suit. If you don't know what a turtle suit is, it's like a quilt with Velcro. And you wear it, and it looks like this little dress. That's it. It Velcros at the top, and that's it. No underwear, no clothing, no dignity, no mental health, nobody. So they'll say, if you even say anything like you're thinking of hurting yourself, you're thinking of, I just want to die, that's enough to put you on suicide watch. So sometimes you'll be placed in SMU, and you have to have an officer on you constantly, that whole time. You don't get evaluated until, I don't know, until they can find somebody to come evaluate you. If it's the weekend, it's kind of like when you get locked up in a county with a judge, you got to wait for the judge to come. It's the same thing. You have to wait for mental health to be called, because they don't use the inside people they have. They call someone else in the county, in the region. You have to wait for that. In the meantime, everything's taken away from you. And you're offered no extra counseling. Nobody comes to say, why are you feeling this way? What can we do to help you? What can we do to make things better? SMU is also just used for housing at times. Sometimes if they don't have anywhere else to put you, they'll put you in SMU. SMU, you are allowed your mattress, you're allowed one blanket, you're allowed 3 sets of clothes, and your legal work. That's it. You can't have pen and paper until someone decides you can. You have to ask for your Bible even. The clothes that they give you are not the ones that you get to pick, because all your property is inventoried and locked up. And some of the officers are so crappy, they'll give you your ugliest set of clothes and throw it at you. Some people don't get anything. They might pass out the little travel size soaps and toothbrushes and stuff like that. They might. SMU is just, to me, I feel like it serves no purpose in a rehabilitation center. And I feel that way because I saw what they do to people. They will keep people back there months, years in this one circumstance. They'll keep you back there. And you don't get treatment while you're back there. They'll bring you some papers and you can do some, assignments, but you're not going to advance in your treatment. You're not going to go anywhere. You'll just sit back there and languish. Do you know that in prison, they even speak about the mental destruction that solitary confinement can cause? Why is it any different in a rehabilitation center? It causes a huge amount of mental destruction in there. So that last day, April 14th, 2021, we passed each other in the breezeway. We shook our heads at each other, and we told each other we loved each other. That was the last time I saw him there, because about 10 o'clock that night, they came and got me. They questioned me, and they told me that they had found a cell phone on a resident, and that it didn't look good for me. Okay. And then they just looked at me, and they said, "You don't have a statement? You don't have anything you want to say?" I said, "If you found that phone, and you already went through it, there's not anything you need me to say." I think that just kind of got under their skin and pissed them off just a little bit. They asked me what I knew about other contraband, about other residents. They asked me how many residents I was involved with, as if I was running some kind of dating service or something. They asked me how long it had gone on. They asked me what my goal was, what was I trying to accomplish. I basically didn't have anything to say. They told me to sign a paper. They told me that HR would be in contact with me, and I was escorted off of the premises. That was the last time I was there, April 14th, 2021. That day drastically changed my life. I made so many decisions that day. And when I drove away, I made a decision that I was going to do what I could to tell people about that place. It didn't hurt me anymore. I didn't work there. What were they going to do, fire me? They already did that. So that's when I decided I was going to devote any amount of free time I had to telling people about this place. So that kind of leads us to last year and this year. This is a news clip of one of the protests that we had in Littlefield. Several of us, moms, wives, sisters, stepkids, made a trip down to Littlefield to stand outside in the dirt, get honked at, yelled at, screamed at, because we wanted to have a peaceful demonstration. So I'll show this for you guys now. What do I push? The arrow? Sydney will do it so I don't mess it up.
Against what advocates say is a failed sex offender treatment program and facility there in town. KLBK's Elizabeth Fitz spoke with the protesters, and Elizabeth, you've been digging into what's going on here. Explain it to us all.
Yes, Matt, the Civil Commitment Facility in Littlefield is home to a statewide treatment program for sex offenders who have already served their time. Family members of the people living inside the barbed wire fences which surround the former prison say their loved ones are being held against their will without proper treatment.
We don't support anyone committing crimes. I want to make that clear. This isn't about us supporting crimes. This is about us supporting people being released after they've served their time.
Protesters believe residents' rights are being violated by the state's Civil Commitment Program, which Governor Abbott reformed in 2015 to help keep the community safe from sex offenders who may reoffend in the future.
Murderers are being let out. They're not being post-convicted and held because they might do something. That's why these men are here, because they might do something.
The treatment program leaves room for interpretation, and family members with loved ones
Well, it might work. Will it do anything? No.
It's just
It cuts you off, Nicole. See if it'll go a little bit.
interpretation, and family members with loved ones.
Oh, it just doesn't want that part to play.
just bad connection, I guess.
She'll put the link up to that so that you can watch it on your own. So this was the most coverage that we got. We have since tried very hard to get more coverage from media. We felt it was successful. We use this a lot. We try to show it to people. We try to tell them, you know, look. Of course, every allegation that we made against Tico, they denied. That's also listed in the story, their response. I kind of let it slip a little bit earlier when I said husband, so let's fast forward a little bit. Yeah. So this right here was April 9th of 22. We went down to Littlefield. So after I was terminated, my husband was locked into SMU, solitary confinement, for over 6 months due to our relationship, improper relationship between staff and a resident. They kept him back there and kept telling him, you are being held for pending investigation, pending charges. They kept him back there for 6 months. Do you know how strong someone has to be to sit back there with nothing but time for 6 months? They also took several of his collateral contacts away, his aunt, his son. He had a few family members who would reach out to me and let me know how he was doing. I will always have an extreme amount of guilt for my actions because I feel like it messed up his treatment. I feel like if I had just left him alone, he'd be out by now. But the other side of me knows that's not true. It doesn't matter if it was me or someone else that talked to him. They're not going to let you out. So he got out of SMU, I think around Thanksgiving. And then they came and told him, you have a warrant for your arrest. Okay, so he's like, what for? They said, failure to register, to comply with the registry. Because all these men are sex offenders. They have to comply with the registry. They are listed. Everybody's address is the same in Littlefield at that facility. You can look them up just like you can look up everybody else. He's like, what? Failure to comply? So when you get out and they give you that list of things that you have to do and you check off on it and you initial and you don't say you have an email and you don't say you have a Facebook, a social media, they got him. So they couldn't get him for anything else at that time. They couldn't get him for, the improper relationship. They couldn't get him for anything else legally, but they got him for that, okay? So this is a current resident of the Texas Civil Commitment Center, Felton B. Brady Jr. Tico wants you to see a cold, unsmiling man as a dangerous person, the perfect criminal to wear else away in this town. These are his previous mugshots from his arrests over the years. This is my husband. I would much rather introduce you to this person. Felton is a man who loves his family, the University of Longhorns. Boo. I'm a Texas Tech fan, so once he comes home, the arguments over sports are probably going to be pretty intense. He loves Sudoku puzzles, and he studies the Bible. He can eat a whole bag of beef jerky in one sitting. He loves to make cheesecakes from all of the different Oreos that he has us send him. He makes cheesecakes for every holiday for the other guys in his pod. Felton expresses his love as a husband. He stepped up to be a father figure where others did not. He's a supportive father to his own 2 sons, and he wishes to meet his grandchildren when he is granted freedom. I broke it. So my husband has grandchildren that he cannot see, speak to. He almost does not get pictures. He has to have these pictures approved. He has 2 granddaughters, and he has another one on the way in August. He won't meet these babies until he is granted freedom because children are not allowed at the facility. Thank you. Yeah, children aren't allowed at the facility. So how is he supposed to meet them? They don't care. That's another thing I wanted to touch base on too is thank you. I tried to make it through, but I knew once I spoke about him, I knew it was going to go. So I probably shouldn't put that part in there. They decide everything. They decide who you get mail from. They decide who you talk to. They decide everything, every move you make, what clothes you wear, because your clothing has to be approved. Yeah, you can wear your own shirt and your own shorts, but they still have to approve it. They have to say if it's okay. So in order to speak to someone at the facility, you have to turn in a slip, and you're allowed to do, I think, 2 at a time, and it's collateral contacts. So you turn in this slip to your case manager, and it has their name and their phone number and their address. That case manager then calls that person and interviews them. I've never been interviewed because I'm not allowed to speak to him. My daughter has been interviewed. Some of my friends have been interviewed because they are collateral contacts. I am not. They'll ask you if you're aware of their crimes. Do you know what they did? Why they're there? And then they'll determine with the therapist whether or not you are a pro-social contact. I should have included the response I got from his case manager denying me contact with my husband. Right now, my husband got out of prison, because he did go to prison. We got married in county jail. That news clip was right after we got married, because once he went to county, he was discharged from civil commitment. So they no longer have any control over what you do. And yeah, if we had wanted to get married, we would have had to ask for permission from them. But since he was in county jail, one of our other friends, Jennifer Williams, got ordained as a minister or as an ordained person to do ceremonies, and she married us at the county jail. These are 15-minute visits. It's kind of hard to get everything in order in a 15-minute. Then we loaded up in the car, and we drove to that protest and stood out in the dirt. That's some wedding day, y'all. So after that, my husband went to prison for failure to comply with the registry. He was given an 18-month sentence. I hired him an attorney and got it reduced to 6 months' time served in county, and he did about 8 months or so at Formby, which is located in Plainview. When he was in prison, I drove the distance to go see him. I think it was about seven hours from where I'm located to go see him. I was a nervous wreck. My stomach was worse than it was earlier before I got up here. Despite what Tico says, my husband and I never did anything inappropriate at the facility. We brushed hands. That's it. I would hand him something and our hands would touch. I never touched him inappropriately. I never kissed him, and we certainly did not have any kind of sexual intercourse like Tico claims we did. This is a facility with over 300 people and cameras everywhere. There's not any sexual activity going on in there by officers and residents. So as of right now, I'm in the process of jumping through hoops for Tico, because in order to be approved as a collateral contact, I must do what they say. Right now, they said because it's unheard of, and this has never happened before, I am having to attend therapy with a therapist. They don't really say what they want me to do or what they want me to talk about. They said it must be a licensed sex offender treatment provider. So I had to look and find one. Of course, insurance doesn't cover this because it's not for me. So I'm paying out of pocket money I don't have to spend on a therapist. So I can discuss what, Tico thinks might be things we might encounter if he comes home. Okay. So I'm doing that right now. I meet with a therapist once a week. Okay, so now I have to do a treatment plan. A treatment plan on what? Well, we don't know. Something that you might face or something that you're facing right now, and how to work through it. How do you become more supportive? How do you help your husband? I don't know. I can't talk to him. You tell me how I'm supposed to help him. Okay, so now I have to write some BS treatment plan to turn into them. Then I have to attend chaperone training. Most of the time, a family member is not asked to attend chaperone training until this person is getting ready to be released. But because they don't know what to do with me, because I won't shut up, they're just throwing things out there for me to do. Okay, so I should be done with everything middle of July. And this is all out of pocket at my own expense, just to be able to maybe speak to him. Because even though they said if I complete it all, I'll be allowed, we all know better. We all know that if they don't want me to talk to him, they don't have to let me. One of the things that I stressed this past legislative session is I found anybody and everybody who would listen to me. And even if they didn't listen, I still sent them an email. I told them, I'm Mandi Brady. My husband is being held indefinitely at the Texas Civil Commitment Center. I have zero contact with him. This is a violation of my civil rights, his civil rights. We, as family members, several of us have reached out to NAACP, ACLU, anybody we can think of to try to get help. Okay, we'll see what we can do. Nothing's being done. So they're allowed to do this. Why is one state agency allowed to have absolute control over someone's life? Just like Lonell mentioned earlier, if our loved one gets sick, we won't know anything about it. No one's going to call me and tell me, your husband, your son is sick. They're in the hospital. When I worked there and someone was in the hospital dying of COVID, the family member was not contacted until after they died. The family member was not allowed to go and see them on their deathbed. The family member was not allowed to talk to them, nothing. This is what we're dealing with. This is what I'm dealing with. This is what I chose to do and the life I chose. So gets back to us and our advocacy. We like to make a lot of noise. Some of us are pretty loud and obnoxious. So on September 13th, 2022, members of FACTS, Families Against Committing Texans Stand Up, and other family members that are committed to the men, we went to the Capitol to spread our truth, the truth about Texas civil commitment. Flyers and brochures were passed out, and each attendee brought a homemade sign. Some of our signs were used to express concerns about the program. Others, we made photos of our loved ones from the past and the present. One of our members couldn't be here today, so she made a poster of her husband, and her daughter helped out with it too. Mr. Rubio is a veteran. He is currently being denied his veteran benefits to go see medical. So this is one of the problems that Irene and her family is tackling. Many photos were taken at this eventful gathering. Some recorded entire speeches that were given by the other supporters. This awareness event was only possible through collaborative efforts from each family member. It was eye-opening to see how many people were affected. That's all of our signs out in front of the Capitol that we made, and this was our first time at the Capitol. We had a photographer, Mr. Alan Pogue, who came out and he took photographs for us. And you'll see in the pictures, a lot of time it's the same 3 or 4 or 5 of us who do all of this. So I wanted to do stuff to bring awareness. And my husband and I, when we still were able to speak, we decided we wanted to create a newsletter to get the word out. So we created the Texas Teen Newsletter. I give the stories to my daughter. She makes them. She sends them out. We just sent them out to the facility at first through contacts of people that I made and mentors over the past couple of years. Cure National picked it up, and so you can also view our newsletter on the Cure National page. They also send it out to other civil commitment facilities. Like that's how I contacted with Minnesota, New Jersey. I get letters from some other prisons all over the state wanting information. So it's getting out there. It's bigger than what I expected it to be. So this was just recently. Yes, sir.
There was going to be another workshop coming in here
Okay.
at that time, but do you think, I wonder if we could invite people to come
Yeah.
to see the end of this at the next
Yeah.
session? Maybe go another 3 or 4 minutes?
Yeah, I'm almost done.
Okay, 'cause it's
Yeah.
tremendous.
Got it. I'm almost done. Yeah. So the last one that we did was here recently on May 25th. We all attended the quarterly meeting that TICO has in Austin. That was our biggest turnout ever. There were about 20 of us there. Some of us spoke. So we're getting more family members involved slowly. But for the rate of the men that are at the facility, we need more family members involved. There's almost 450 at least there, and we need more than just the same 5 or 6 of us doing everything. So these are just pictures. We always try to take pictures of each other so that we have them to share. Sometimes we try to send them in, but that's the problem with sending in pictures is like I can't send a picture to my husband that contains other family members because that's not approved. So sometimes they don't get them. But every once in a while they do. So they'll see, oh, I know who that is, or that's so-and-so's mom, or whatever. So these right here are just links to different news articles. And there is also a petition. The petition's been floating around for a couple of years now. It was started by another organization, and they have it on their website, but we can also share it with other people. We're trying to get 5,000 signatures. It's a little over 4,000 right now. So if anybody wants to get it and share it or ask for the link, I'll get it for you. We are trying to push it as far as we can, get people to sign it. It brings forth awareness. It helps us let people know. And then the more signatures we have, we can present it to the right people. So one of the most important things that I want you to take away from this workshop, if nothing else, is that this can happen to you or your loved one. It can happen to somebody that you know. You must educate yourself on the laws and the criteria of your individual state, because this doesn't just happen in Texas. So I wanted to thank everybody for coming, for listening to me ramble and cry. And there's just a few people that have been instrumental in helping me, and I just wanted to thank them. One of them is Mary Sue, Eldon Dillingham out of Kansas, Charlie Sullivan with Cure National, Janet Mackey with Cure, Wayne Bowers with Cure. Roy Markham is a detainee that helps us with legal questions. He's very knowledgeable. I think he's in New Jersey. Daniel Wilson, who's in Minnesota. And then, you know, without people like friendships and supporters, we can't continue to do the things that we do. But I wanted to thank everybody for coming, and that's the end of my presentation.